Imagine finding out you're finally pregnant, and 10 minutes later, hearing your husband whisper, baby, to someone else. That's where Victoria Sterling's nightmare begins. Marble floors, a second phone that never stops lighting up, and a baby shower where the brand consultant isn't just a fling, she's the fuse. By the time the chandeliers dim at the Sterling Gala, deepfakes are rolling, security is closing in, and the woman everyone called unstable walks in with an IV pole, a plan, and the one recording that can nuke an empire in real time. Why are the cameras already wounded at the stage? Who set the trap? Her enemy or her secret ally? And when the sirens hit and a single cry slices the room, whose name will New York be chanting? Stay, every clue you catch now will make the final twist detonate harder. If high-stakes betrayal, courtroom shockwaves, and Phoenix-level comebacks are your thing, tap. Like so more people find this, drop your boldest theory in the comments, share it with a friend who loves jaw-drop drama, and hit subscribe. Because you do not want to miss the moment the truth walks into the ballroom. Victoria Sterling stood in her marble bathroom, staring at the pregnancy test with trembling hands. Two pink lines. After 3 years of trying, she was finally pregnant. Tears of joy streamed down her face as she imagined telling Marcus. He would sweep her into his arms, spin her around, maybe even cry himself. This baby would fix everything that had felt wrong between them lately. She clutched the test to her chest and practically floated downstairs to his home office. The mahogany door was slightly ajar, and she could hear his voice, low and intimate. Victoria paused, not wanting to interrupt a business call. I miss you too, baby, Marcus murmured into the phone. Tonight was incredible. You drive me absolutely crazy. Victoria's blood turned to ice. That wasn't his business voice. No, she doesn't suspect anything. Marcus continued with a dark chuckle. Victoria's too trusting for her own good. Besides, she's been so focused on getting pregnant, she barely notices when I'm gone. The pregnancy test slipped from Victoria's fingers, clattering on the marble floor. Marcus spun around, his face draining of color as he saw her standing there. Victoria, he said, quickly ending the call. How long have you been standing there? Long enough, she whispered, her hand instinctively moving to her still flat stomach. Who was that? Marcus's expression shifted from panic to calculated calm. He stood, straightening his Italian suit, and walked toward her with measured steps. That was James Morrison from the Singapore office. We were discussing the merger. You called James Morrison baby? Victoria's voice cracked. You said I don't suspect anything. Marcus sighed, running a hand through his dark hair. Victoria, darling, you're being paranoid. James and I were joking about his wife not suspecting his surprise anniversary party. You only heard part of the conversation. I know what I heard, Marcus. He cupped her face gently, his brown eyes radiating false concern. Sweetheart, you've been under so much stress with the fertility treatments. Dr. Harrison said hormonal imbalances can cause paranoid episodes. Remember? Victoria wanted to scream that she wasn't paranoid, but doubt crept in. She had been emotional lately. The treatments had been brutal on her body and mind. Look, Marcus said, pulling out his phone. Here's my call log. James Morrison, Singapore office. He showed her the screen, and sure enough, the last call showed James's name. But something felt wrong. The way he'd said those words, the tenderness in his voice that she hadn't heard directed at her in months. There's something else, Victoria said quietly, holding up the pregnancy test she'd retrieved from the floor. I'm pregnant. Marcus's eyes widened. For a moment, she saw something flash across his face. Not joy, not excitement, something closer to panic. But then he smiled, that brilliant smile that had made her fall in love with him 7 years ago. Pregnant. He pulled her into an embrace. Victoria, that's wonderful news. We're having a baby. But his arms felt stiff, mechanical. His voice carried the right words, but the wrong tone. And when he kissed her forehead, she caught a whiff of perfume that definitely wasn't hers. I need to make some calls, Marcus said, already stepping back. Cancel my Singapore trip. Clear my schedule. This is big news, darling. Why don't you rest? I'll have Martha prepare something special for dinner. He was already reaching for his phone as he spoke, fingers flying across the screen. Not looking at her, not touching her stomach, not asking how she felt or when she'd found out or any of the questions an excited father-to-be should ask. Victoria stood alone in the hallway as Marcus disappeared back into his office, the door clicking shut behind him. She heard the lock turn. Since when did he lock his door? She pressed her hand to her stomach where their child was growing. "It's okay, little one," she whispered. "Daddy's just surprised. He'll come around." But as she climbed the stairs to their bedroom, she couldn't shake the image of a second phone she'd glimpsed in his desk drawer when he'd opened it. A phone she'd never seen before, a phone that had been lighting up with message after message from someone saved as Jay. That night, as Marcus slept beside her, his phone charging on his nightstand, Victoria lay awake staring at the ceiling. Every instinct screamed that something was wrong. But every time she tried to grasp the truth, Marcus's words echoed in her mind, paranoid, hormonal, stressed. At 3 in the morning, Marcus's phone buzzed. He didn't wake. Victoria carefully reached over and glimpsed the notification before it disappeared. "Can't wait to see you tomorrow at the usual place. Wear the red dress I bought you." The sender's name was just an initial, J. Victoria's heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. But she didn't cry, she didn't confront him. She simply lay back down, placed her hand on her stomach, and made a silent promise to her unborn child. "I'll protect you," she whispered into the darkness, "no matter what it takes." 3 months later, Victoria stood in her walk-in closet, trying to find something that fit her growing bump. The baby shower was in 2 hours and nothing looked right. Everything felt like a costume for a play she no longer wanted to perform in. "You look beautiful," Sarah Martinez said from the doorway, holding 2 cups of herbal tea. "Stop overthinking." Sarah had been Victoria's best friend since college, before the money, before Marcus, before everything became complicated. She was the only person who still called Victoria Vic and told her when she had lipstick on her teeth. "I look like a whale in designer clothing," Victoria muttered, pulling on a pale blue maternity dress that cost more than most people's monthly rent. "You look like a goddess creating life," Sarah corrected, handing her the tea. "Marcus is lucky to have you." Victoria nearly laughed. Marcus had been working late every night for the past month. His mysterious business trips had doubled. And that second phone she'd discovered? She'd found it hidden in his gym bag, filled with messages she couldn't bring herself to read. "Sarah," Victoria started, then stopped. How could she explain that she thought her husband was having an affair while she was carrying his child? It sounded pathetic even in her head. "What is it, honey?" Sarah's brown eyes filled with concern. "Nothing, just pregnancy hormones." The baby shower was being held in their Hampton Estates garden, decorated with thousands of white roses and crystal chandeliers hanging from the trees. 50 of New York's elite had gathered to celebrate the future sterling heir. Victoria played her part perfectly, smiling, laughing, accepting congratulations and advice from women who'd had their own children raised by nannies. "Victoria, darling, you're glowing," gushed Patricia Blackwood, Michael's wife, air-kissing both cheeks. "Marcus must be over the moon." "He's very excited," Victoria lied smoothly, noting that Marcus was nowhere to be seen. Again. "Where is that handsome husband of yours?" Patricia asked, looking around. "Important call with Tokyo," Victoria said, the excuse rolling off her tongue with practiced ease. "You know how it is." Patricia nodded sympathetically, though Victoria caught the pitying look in her eyes. Everyone knew how it was. Everyone pretended not to notice. An hour into the party, Victoria excused herself to use the bathroom. The house felt blissfully quiet after the chaos of the garden. She was heading back outside when she heard it, a giggle from the pool house. Her blood ran cold. She knew that giggle. Jade Winters, the 28-year-old Instagram influencer Marcus had hired as a brand consultant for his company. Victoria had met her twice, both times feeling like a frumpy housewife next to Jade's perfect everything. Victoria crept closer to the pool house, her heart pounding. Through the glass door, she could see them. Marcus had Jade pressed against the wall, his hands in her long blonde hair, kissing her like Victoria hadn't been kissed in years. The party's still going on. Jade gasped between kisses. What if someone sees? Let them, Marcus growled. I'm tired of hiding. Victoria's too stupid to notice anyway. She's completely bought the whole stressed businessman act. And the baby? Jade asked, trailing her manicured nails down his chest. The baby changes nothing. I'll divorce her after it's born. Make it look like postpartum depression. Get full custody, then you and I can be together properly. Victoria's knees buckled. She grabbed the door frame to steady herself, accidentally rattling the door. Marcus and Jade sprang apart. Victoria, Marcus said, his face cycling through emotions before settling on concern. Darling, what are you doing here? I saw you, Victoria whispered, her voice shaking. I saw everything. Marcus stepped forward, hands outstretched. You're confused, sweetheart. Jade was just showing me something on her phone about the company's social media strategy. Against the wall with your tongue down her throat? Jade smirked, not even trying to look guilty. Victoria, you're clearly emotional. Maybe you should sit down. Don't you dare, Victoria snarled, finding strength in her anger. Don't you dare gaslight me. I know what I saw. Marcus's expression hardened. What you saw was a business discussion that you are misinterpreting because of your condition. You've been paranoid for months, Victoria. Everyone's noticed. Everyone? Victoria's voice cracked. Ask anyone at the party. You've been acting erratic, emotional, making accusations. It's concerning, honestly. I've been thinking maybe you need help. Victoria looked between them, Jade's satisfied smirk and Marcus's false concern, and realized with crystal clarity what was happening. This wasn't just an affair. This was a campaign to destroy her credibility. She turned and walked back to the party on shaking legs. 50 faces turned to her as she emerged from the house, mascara running down her cheeks. Victoria, sweetheart, are you all right? Her mother asked, rushing over. Marcus is having an affair, Victoria announced to the stunned crowd. I just caught him with Jade Winters in the pool house. The silence was deafening. Then Marcus emerged, Jade a respectful distance behind him, both looking perfectly composed. I'm sorry, everyone, Marcus said, his voice dripping with practiced concern. Victoria's been having episodes. The pregnancy has been very hard on her mental health. He moved to her side, placing a protective arm around her shoulders that felt like a prison. I found her crying in the pool house, making wild accusations about Jade, who was just returning my phone I'd left by the pool. That's not what happened, Victoria protested. But she saw the looks exchanged between the guests. Poor Victoria. Pregnancy hormones. How embarrassing. Maybe you should lie down, dear, her own mother suggested gently. You do seem overwrought. Victoria looked around at the faces of people she'd considered friends, family, allies. They all wore the same expression. Pity mixed with discomfort. Not a single person believed her. The security cameras, Victoria said suddenly. Check the security footage. It will show everything. Marcus's face didn't change, but she saw Jade's eyes flicker with something. Amusement? Of course, darling, Marcus said soothingly. We'll check them, but right now you need rest. Later, after the guests had made awkward excuses and left, after her mother had given her a Xanax and tucked her into bed like a child, Victoria snuck down to the security room. She pulled up the footage from the pool house. Static. 3 hours of static from 1 hour before the party to now. Looking for something? Marcus asked from the doorway. Victoria spun around. He was holding a glass of scotch, looking completely relaxed. You erased it, she whispered. Erased what? The footage of your breakdown? That would be cruel. No, it seems we've been having technical difficulties with that camera. I'll have to call the company tomorrow. You planned this whole thing. Marcus moved into the room, setting down his drink. Victoria, I'm going to say this once. You're carrying my child. That gives you certain protections. But if you continue with these delusions, if you embarrass me again, I'll have no choice but to have you evaluated. For your own good, of course. And the babies. The threat hung between them like a blade. Now, he continued, straightening his cuffs, you're going to go upstairs, take your medication, and sleep. Tomorrow you'll apologize to our friends for your outburst. You'll tell them it was the hormones, the stress, whatever excuse sounds most pathetic. And you'll thank Jade for being so understanding about your false accusations. Go to hell, Victoria spat. Marcus smiled, cold and sharp. I'm already there, darling. But at least I'm enjoying the company. He left her alone in the security room, staring at the static on the screen. Victoria placed her hands on her stomach, feeling the baby move for the first time. A flutter, like butterfly wings. I'm so sorry, little one, she whispered. Mommy's going to get us out of this, I promise. But even as she said it, she wasn't sure how. Marcus held all the cards, and she was starting to realize she'd never really known the game they were playing. Sarah Martinez sat across from Victoria at the small cafe downtown, sliding a manila folder across the table. They'd chosen this place specifically because Marcus would never be caught dead in such a middle-class establishment. These are Marcus's real financial records, Sarah said quietly, her journalist instincts having kicked in after the baby shower disaster 2 weeks ago. I had a friend in forensic accounting look into them. Victoria opened the folder with trembling hands, then frowned. The bank statements showed regular deposits and withdrawals, nothing suspicious. No large transfers to hidden accounts, no payments to hotels or jewelry stores. Everything looked normal. I don't understand, Victoria said, looking up at her friend. These show he's clean. Sarah bit her lip, looking uncomfortable. Vic, honey, that's what I needed to talk to you about. There's no evidence of an affair, no financial trail, no hotel receipts, nothing. But I saw them together. I know what you think you saw, Sarah interrupted gently. But Marcus asked me to talk to you. He's worried, Vic. We all are. The blood drained from Victoria's face. He asked you to talk to me? He's setting up an appointment with Dr. Patricia Hendricks. She specializes in prenatal psychology. We think, it might help. Victoria stared at her best friend, the betrayal cutting deeper than any knife. He's paying you. What? No. Victoria, I would never. How much, Sarah? How much did it cost to buy my best friend? Sarah's face crumbled, and in that moment, Victoria knew. The tears that followed were real, but the friendship was over. 50,000, Sarah whispered, to pay off my student loans. Victoria, I'm so sorry, but he had evidence that I'd falsified sources for a story 3 years ago. My career would be over, and honestly, I started wondering if maybe he was right. Maybe you are. Victoria stood up, her 6-month pregnant belly making the movement awkward. Paranoid? Crazy? What else did he tell you to say? He loves you, Sarah said desperately. He just wants you to get help. Victoria walked out without another word, her last ally gone. On the street, her phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. I heard you met with Sarah. Good. Dr. Hendricks can see you tomorrow at 2. She deleted the message and kept walking, but her phone buzzed again. This time it was a Google alert for her own name. Her blood ran cold as she read the headline. Sterling Ayer's wife suffers public breakdown, sources say. The article was accompanied by photos from the baby shower. Her tear-stained face, the shocked guests, Marcus looking concerned and supportive. But that wasn't the worst part. There were other photos, ones she'd never seen before. Victoria at a bar, looking disheveled. Victoria seemingly arguing with a man who wasn't Marcus. Victoria passed out in a car. She clicked on the images, zooming in. They were deep fakes, good ones. Her face expertly mapped onto other women's bodies in compromising positions. But would anyone else look that closely? Her phone rang. Marcus. Have you seen the news? He asked, his voice deadly calm. You did this, Victoria whispered. You did this to yourself when you decided to embarrass me. But don't worry, I've already issued a statement about your struggle with mental health during pregnancy. People are very understanding. I'm going to expose you. With what evidence? Your friend Sarah confirms you're unstable. The security footage doesn't exist. And now there are photos of you all over the internet showing what kind of woman you really are. Who's going to believe you? The line went dead. Victoria stood on the busy Manhattan street, watching people pass by, none of them knowing her world was crumbling. She needed help, but everyone who might have helped her had been turned against her. That night, she came home to find Dr. Patricia Hendricks in her living room, along with Marcus and 2 men in medical uniforms. Victoria, Dr. Hendricks said kindly, your husband is concerned about your well-being. He's shown me some disturbing evidence of erratic behavior. I'm not crazy, Victoria said firmly. No one's saying you are, the doctor replied, but prenatal psychosis is a real condition. For the safety of your baby, we think a short stay at Wellness Haven might help. Wellness Haven, the psychiatric facility on Long Island where wealthy families hid their embarrassing relatives. You can't force me, Victoria said, backing toward the door. Actually, Marcus said, producing a document, I can. I've been granted temporary medical power of attorney based on your recent behavior. It's just for 72 hours of evaluation. The two men moved toward her. Victoria's hand went to her belly protectively. Please, she begged, looking at Marcus. Don't do this. Our baby needs a stable mother, Marcus said coldly. Take her. As they led her away, Victoria caught a glimpse of Jade Winters standing in the shadows of the hallway, wearing Victoria's silk robe, sipping from Victoria's favorite mug. The last thing she heard was Marcus on the phone. Yes, she's being taken care of. The house is finally quiet. Wellness Haven was nothing like the psychiatric hospitals in movies. It was beautiful, sprawling gardens, private rooms, gourmet meals. A prison decorated in luxury. Victoria spent her first 24 hours refusing medication, demanding lawyers, insisting on her sanity to anyone who would listen. No one did. On the second day, as she sat in the garden pretending to read while actually planning her escape, a familiar voice made her freeze. Hello, Victoria. She looked up to see Michael Blackwood, Marcus's biggest rival in the hedge fund world. Tall, silver-haired, with eyes that missed nothing. He sat down beside her uninvited. What are you doing here? She asked warily. Visiting my sister. She's been here for 6 months. Real depression, not the manufactured kind. He studied her carefully. You look surprisingly sane for someone supposedly suffering from prenatal psychosis. That's because I am sane. Marcus is having an affair with Jade Winters, systematically destroying your credibility and planning to divorce you after the baby is born to avoid paying full alimony. Yes, I know. Victoria's mouth fell open. How? Michael smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Because I've been watching Marcus Sterling for 5 years, waiting for him to make a mistake. You, my dear, are that mistake. I'm not following. Marcus thinks he's untouchable, but he's gotten sloppy. Jade Winters isn't just his mistress. She's been selling information about his trades to his competitors. She's also been recording their conversations. She plans to blackmail him once you're out of the picture. Why are you telling me this? Because the enemy of my enemy is my friend, and because I believe in justice. He pulled out a phone, showing her a video. It was Marcus and Jade in his office, but this time the audio was clear. Once Victoria is declared incompetent, I can access her trust fund, Marcus was saying. $20 million her grandmother left her. In the prenup, Jade asked. Void if she's mentally incompetent when we divorce. I get everything, including full custody. Victoria's hands shook as she watched. How did you get this? I have my sources. The question is, what do you want to do with it? I want to destroy him, Victoria said without hesitation. Michael smiled, genuinely this time. Good, then let's get you out of here. 2 hours later, Michael's lawyers had her released, claiming improper commitment procedures. Marcus was in Singapore on business, or so he thought. Victoria knew from his calendar that he was actually in Miami with Jade. Back at Michael's penthouse, Victoria sat at a massive dining table covered in documents. This is everything, Michael said. Marcus has been embezzling from his own company, using investor funds for personal expenses, and bribing SEC officials. But here's the best part. He's been using Jade's Instagram influencer business to launder money. Why haven't you exposed him before? No proof that would stick. But with your help, as his wife with legal access to his personal files, you want me to be your spy. I want you to be his downfall. The Sterling Foundation Gala is in 3 days. Everyone who matters will be there. Marcus is planning to announce Jade as his new business partner, basically announcing your replacement while you're supposedly getting treatment. Victoria's jaw clenched. What do you need me to do? Get into his home office? His real books are in a safe behind the Monet. The combination is your original anniversary date. He never changes passwords. The arrogant fool. How do you know that? Michael's expression darkened. Because 5 years ago, he did the same thing to my sister. Drove her crazy, literally. She's the one I'm visiting here. She tried to warn you at your wedding, remember? The crazy woman who had to be escorted out? Victoria remembered. A beautiful woman in her 30s, screaming that Marcus was a monster, that he'd destroyed her life. Security had removed her while guests tittered about mental illness and obsessed ex-girlfriends. That was your sister? Alexandra Blackwood. She was brilliant, ran her own investment firm. Then she met Marcus. Within a year, she was in here, diagnosed with paranoid delusions. He took everything from her. My God, how many others? At least 3 that I know of. You're the first one to fight back while still legally competent. Victoria stood, her hand on her belly. Then let's make sure I'm the last. That night, while Marcus was still in Miami, Victoria broke into her own home. It felt surreal, sneaking through rooms she'd decorated, past furniture she'd chosen back when she still believed in their future. The office safe opened easily. Michael was right about the combination. Inside were 2 sets of books, the real ones showing millions in embezzled funds, offshore accounts in the Caymans, and payments to someone named Jay Sterling for consulting services. Jay Sterling, Victoria murmured, photographing everything. Something about that name. Her phone buzzed. A text from Michael. Get out. Now, Marcus just landed at JFK. But Victoria had one more stop. She went to their bedroom, to Marcus's closet, to the hidden panel she'd discovered years ago but never opened, respecting his privacy like a fool. Inside were documents that made her blood freeze. Birth certificates. Jade Winters, born Jade Sterling. Marcus's half-sister. The room spun. She was going to be sick. All this time, the affair, the betrayal, it was with his own sister. The baby kicked hard, as if sensing her distress. Car lights swept across the bedroom window. Marcus was home. Victoria grabbed the documents and ran, making it out the back door just as she heard the front door open. She didn't stop running until she was 3 blocks away, where Michael's driver was waiting. Did you get it? Michael asked when she collapsed into the back seat. I got more than we bargained for, Victoria gasped, showing him the birth certificate. The gala is going to be very interesting. Michael looked at the document and whistled low. Marcus Sterling, you sick bastard. You're finally going to pay. As they drove away, Victoria didn't see Marcus standing at their bedroom window, holding the single earring she'd dropped in her haste to leave. He was smiling. The morning of the gala, Victoria woke in Michael's guest room to find an envelope slid under her door. No name, no address, just a USB drive and a note. The truth about Marcus Sterling. Use this wisely. A friend. Michael examined it carefully at breakfast. Could be a trap. Or it could be the final nail in his coffin, Victoria said, plugging it into a secure laptop. The files that loaded made both of them gasp. Financial records showing Marcus had stolen from children's cancer charities. Recordings of him discussing bribes with city officials. Photos of him with known crime family members. This is it, Michael breathed. This is everything we need. Who would send this? Victoria wondered aloud. Someone who wants Marcus destroyed as much as we do. The enemy list is long. Victoria's phone rang. Sarah's number. Don't hang up, Sarah said quickly when Victoria answered. I know you hate me, but you need to know something. Marcus knows you were at the house. He knows you have the documents. He's setting a trap at the gala tonight. Why should I trust you? Because I kept the recording of him trying to bribe me. Because I'm writing an expose that will run tomorrow. And because I was never your friend, Vic, I was your sister. And sisters make stupid mistakes. Victoria's eyes welled with tears. Sarah, save it for after you destroy him. Just be careful. He's planning something big. The line went dead. Victoria looked at Michael. It could be another trick. Everything could be a trick at this point, Michael said grimly. But we're going ahead. The FBI will be waiting outside. The moment we present the evidence, they'll move in. That evening, Victoria stood before the mirror in a stunning black gown, her 7-month bump prominently displayed. She looked like a warrior queen. Michael knocked and entered, holding a velvet box. "These were my mother's," he said, revealing a stunning diamond necklace. "She wore them the night she took down the man who destroyed our father's business. Seems fitting." As he clasped them around her neck, their eyes met in the mirror. "You know Marcus won't go down without a fight." "I'm counting on it," Victoria said. "I want him to fight. I want everyone to see who he really is." They arrived at the gala separately. Victoria entered through a side door, staying hidden in an alcove where she could see the main ballroom. Marcus was already there, jade on his arm in a red dress that left nothing to the imagination. They were laughing, champagne flowing, surrounded by admirers. "Ladies and gentlemen," Marcus's voice boomed over the microphone, "before we begin tonight's festivities, I have an announcement. As many of you know, my wife Victoria has been struggling with mental health issues." Victoria started to move, but Michael held her back. "Wait. In light of her condition, I've had to make some difficult decisions. Effective immediately, Jade Winters will be taking over Victoria's position on the Sterling Foundation board." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Even in their world of casual cruelty, this was bold. "Furthermore," Marcus continued, his smile sharp as a blade, "I'm announcing the launch of the Sterling Winters Initiative, a partnership that will revolutionize how we approach charitable giving." That was Victoria's cue. She stepped into the ballroom, her entrance causing a wave of shocked whispers. "How fascinating, Marcus. Will this charity also involve stealing from children with cancer?" The room fell silent. Marcus's face went pale, then red. "Security, don't bother," Victoria said, holding up the USB drive. "Everyone here is going to want to see what's on this." She plugged it into the presentation system Marcus had set up for his announcement. The screens around the room flickered to life. But instead of financial documents, a video began to play. It was Victoria, but not Victoria, a deep fake so sophisticated it would fool anyone. In it, she was having a mental breakdown, ranting about conspiracies, threatening to hurt herself and the baby. "As you can see," Marcus said smoothly, "my wife is very ill. This was recorded yesterday at Wellness Haven." "That's not real," Victoria shouted, but doubt was already spreading through the crowd. Another video played, Victoria supposedly meeting with known criminals, discussing plans to frame Marcus for embezzlement, then another of her supposedly using drugs while pregnant. "The USB was a plant," Michael whispered urgently. "We need to go." But security was already surrounding them. Not hotel security, private military contractors Marcus had hired. "Did you really think I wouldn't know?" Marcus asked, approaching slowly. Michael Blackwood, my greatest rival, suddenly helping my poor, delusional wife. "I knew every move you made. Every document you found was one I wanted you to find." "The birth certificate." "Oh, that's real," Marcus said casually, causing another wave of gasps. "Jade is my half-sister. So what? We're not actually sleeping together, you perverted minds. It's a business arrangement. She plays the mistress to give me grounds for divorce while making Victoria look crazy. Quite brilliant, really." Victoria felt the room spinning. Everything had been a lie. Even the affair was a performance. "And you, Michael," Marcus continued, "you've been so focused on revenge for your pathetic sister that you didn't notice I've been buying up your investors. As of an hour ago, I own 51% of your company." Michael's face went white. "That's impossible." "Nothing's impossible with the right leverage. Your sister, by the way, sends her regards. We had a lovely chat this morning about increasing her medication." That's when they heard the sirens. FBI agents stormed in, but instead of arresting Marcus, they surrounded Victoria and Michael. "Victoria Sterling," the lead agent announced, "you're under arrest for corporate espionage, fraud, and conspiracy to commit embezzlement." "What?" Victoria gasped as they cuffed her. "Check the real evidence. He's the criminal." "We have checked," the agent said. "Your fingerprints are all over the fraudulent documents. Your signatures on the illegal transfers. Your communication with known criminals." Marcus had thought of everything. Every document she'd touched in his office had been a forgery with her fingerprints. Every photo she'd taken had been of fake evidence he'd planted. And the real evidence? It never existed. "Don't worry about our baby," Marcus called as they led her away. "I'll take excellent care of our child. After all, I'll have full custody once you're in prison." The last thing Victoria saw was the crowd of New York's elite, people she'd known for years, all looking at her with disgust and pity. The crazy woman who tried to frame her successful husband. As the FBI car pulled away, Victoria realized with crystal clarity that she'd lost everything. But in her belly, the baby kicked hard, reminding her that the fight wasn't over. It had just begun. House arrest was a special kind of hell. An ankle monitor tracked Victoria's every move in the small apartment the court had approved, a far cry from the Sterling penthouse. 8 months pregnant now, she could barely move without feeling like a watched animal. The FBI had frozen her assets, seized her passport, and monitored her communications. The trial was set for 3 months after her due date. Michael had been released after 48 hours, his lawyers proving his innocence. But he'd lost his company to Marcus's hostile takeover. He visited when he could, but they both knew they were being watched. "Any word from the lawyer?" Michael asked during one visit, speaking carefully. "Richard Stone dropped my case," Victoria said flatly. "Marcus got to him, threatened to expose some insider trading from 10 years ago." She didn't cry anymore. She'd run out of tears somewhere between the third FBI interrogation and the moment she'd seen herself on the news labeled as disgraced socialite in fraud scandal. A knock at the door interrupted them. Victoria opened it to find a process server. "Divorce papers," he said, handing her the thick envelope. "You've been served." The documents were brutal. Marcus was filing for divorce on grounds of mental instability and criminal behavior. He wanted full custody of their unborn child, no visitation rights, and was seeking a restraining order, claiming she posed a danger to the baby. "He can't do this," Victoria said, her hands shaking. "He can and he will," Michael said grimly, "unless we find something real on him." "How? I can't leave this apartment. I can't access any computers without supervision. I can't." She stopped, pressing her hand to her belly as a contraction hit. "Braxton Hicks? I don't know. They've been coming all morning." Another knock. This time it was someone unexpected. Tommy Reynolds, a scrawny 25-year-old in a hoodie and jeans. Victoria recognized him as one of her former startup employees from years ago, before she'd given up everything for Marcus. "Mrs. Sterling, we need to talk. May I come in?" Michael moved protectively in front of Victoria. "Who are you?" "Someone who owes her everything," Tommy said, pulling back his hood to reveal a face Victoria barely recognized. When she'd known him, he'd been a brilliant but troubled kid she'd hired despite his criminal record. She'd given him a chance when no one else would. "Tommy?" Victoria gasped. "I thought you were in witness protection." "I was, until I heard what Marcus was doing to you." He pulled out a laptop. "You saved my life once. Time to return the favor." He opened the computer, fingers flying across the keyboard. "When you sold your company to support Marcus, you forgot something. The old servers you used for the startup, they're still active, still recording. And guess who used your old office for private meetings thinking it was abandoned?" Video files loaded on the screen, Marcus in Victoria's old startup office, meeting with men in suits. "Turn up the volume," Michael said urgently. Marcus's voice filled the room. "The money from the Children's Cancer Fund has been transferred to the Cayman account. 20 million, clean and untraceable." Another video, Marcus with a different man. "If the SEC investigates, we blame everything on Victoria. I've been setting her up for 2 years, creating a paper trail. She won't even know until it's too late." And then the most damning one. Marcus was someone Victoria didn't recognize, dated 3 years ago. Jennifer knew too much. The car accident was the cleanest solution. Make sure the brake lines look like normal wear. Yeah, Victoria's blood went cold. Jennifer was his first wife. "He murdered her," Michael whispered. "He actually murdered her." Tommy pulled up more files. "I've got 3 years of recordings. Every crime, every confession, every conspiracy. But here's the kicker. Jade isn't his sister." What? Victoria and Michael said in unison. The birth certificate was forged. Jade Winters is actually Jade Androvic, daughter of Serbian crime boss Milan Androvic. She's been playing Marcus from the beginning, planning to take everything once you were gone. Another contraction hit Victoria, stronger this time. She gripped the table, breathing through it. We need to get this to the authorities, Michael said. Which ones? Tommy asked. Half the FBI is on Marcus's payroll. The other half won't believe us after the fake evidence fiasco. Then we go public, Victoria gasped, another contraction hitting. At the Gala, tonight's the annual Sterling Foundation Christmas benefit. Everyone will be there. Media, investors, everyone. You can't leave the apartment, Michael reminded her. Unless I'm in labor, Victoria said, looking at the puddle of fluid at her feet. My water just broke. The room exploded into chaos. Michael called an ambulance while Tommy backed up everything to multiple drives. As the EMTs arrived, Victoria grabbed Tommy's arm. Get everything ready. When I give the signal, broadcast it all. Every screen, every device at that gala. What signal? Victoria smiled for the first time in months. You'll know. As they wheeled her out, she heard Michael on the phone. Yes, she's in labor. The Sterling baby is coming. Alert the media. In the ambulance, between contractions, Victoria did something that would have seemed insane to anyone watching. She laughed. Marcus thought he'd won. Jade thought she was playing him. The FBI thought they had their criminal. But none of them knew that Victoria Sterling, even in labor, even under house arrest, was about to burn their entire world to the ground. The EMT looked concerned. Ma'am, are you okay? Never better, Victoria said, gripping the rail as another contraction hit. I'm about to give birth to more than just a baby tonight. The ambulance raced through the streets of Manhattan, heading not to the hospital, but to destiny. The Sterling Foundation Christmas Gala was about to become the most memorable event in New York society history. And Victoria Sterling, the woman they had all written off as crazy, was about to prove that the most dangerous person in the room is the one with nothing left to lose and everything to fight for. The Ritz-Carlton ballroom glittered with 1,000 lights, each table decorated with crystal and gold for the Sterling Foundation Christmas Gala. Marcus stood at the podium, his smile radiant as he addressed the crowd of 500 elite guests. Tonight we celebrate not just the season of giving, but new beginnings, he announced, Jade resplendent in gold beside him. As many of you know, my personal life has been challenging, but I'm pleased to announce that the ballroom doors burst open. Victoria Sterling walked in, still in her hospital gown, IV pole in one hand, the other pressed to her contracting shoulder. Blood spotted her gown. Her hair was wild. She looked like an avenging angel. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Security moved forward, but stopped when they saw the cameras. Every major news outlet had their lenses trained on her. Don't mind me, Victoria called out, her voice carrying despite the pain. Please, Marcus, continue telling everyone about your new beginning. Maybe start with how you murdered your first wife. The room erupted. Marcus grabbed the microphone. Security! She's escaped from custody. She's dangerous. The only danger here is you, Victoria said, advancing slowly. With each step, she hit a button on the phone Tommy had given her. Every screen in the ballroom flickered to life. Marcus's voice filled the room from the recordings. Jennifer knew too much. The car accident was the cleanest solution. Screams, chairs scraping, reporters surging forward. That's fake, Marcus shouted. Deep fake technology. She's insane. Another button, another video. Marcus stealing from the Children's Cancer Fund, laughing about how easy it was to fool grieving parents. Turn it off, Marcus roared, but Tommy had hacked everything. The screens, the guests' phones, even the hotel's lobby displays, all showing Marcus's confessions. Victoria reached the stage, breathing through a contraction. There's more. Should I continue? Jade stepped forward, her mask finally slipping. You stupid woman, you have no idea what you've done. Oh, I know exactly what I've done, Jade. Or should I say Jade Androvic? Now Jade went pale. In the crowd, several men in dark suits stood up. Her father's men, realizing she'd been exposed. That's right, Victoria continued, projecting to the room. She's not Marcus's sister. She's the daughter of a Serbian crime boss, and she's been planning to kill Marcus and take everything once I was in prison. You're lying, Birdie Shane, Jade snarled. Victoria hit another button. A recording of Jade played. Once Marcus divorces his pathetic wife, I'll wait 6 months, then a tragic accident. I'll inherit everything as his grieving fiancé. The dark-suited men moved toward the stage. Jade backed away from Marcus, real fear in her eyes now. You were playing me, Marcus said, stunned. Like a violin, Victoria said. Both of you were so busy destroying me, you never saw each other coming. That's when the FBI burst in. The real FBI, not Marcus's paid cronies. They'd been watching the live stream Tommy was broadcasting to 2 million viewers. Marcus Sterling, the lead agent announced, you're under arrest for murder, embezzlement, fraud. No, Marcus grabbed Victoria, pulling a letter opener from the podium. You've ruined everything. He pressed the blade to her throat as cameras flashed and people screamed. Victoria felt another contraction hit, the strongest yet. Let her go, Sterling, the agent said, weapons drawn. I'll kill her. I'll kill them both. That's when Michael Blackwood emerged from the crowd. No, you won't, because if you do, this plays. He held up his phone, showing a video of Marcus that made even him go white. Victoria couldn't see it, but she heard the audio. Marcus confessing to crimes that would put him away for life, naming every corrupt official, every dirty deal, every murder. It was dated a week ago. How? Marcus whispered. Your girlfriend Jade recorded everything, Michael said. She was going to use it as insurance. But she made a deal with the FBI yesterday, full immunity in exchange for everything on you. Marcus looked at Jade, who shrugged. Sorry, darling. Daddy always said never fall for your own con. In his shock, Marcus's grip loosened. Victoria broke free, stumbling forward as another contraction hit. This time, she couldn't stay standing. She collapsed to her knees, screaming. The baby's coming, someone shouted. Marcus tried to run, but the FBI tackled him. As they dragged him past Victoria, he snarled, This isn't over. Victoria looked up at him, sweat running down her face, and smiled. Yes, it is, because your son or daughter is about to be born free of you. The paramedics rushed in, but it was too late to move her. On the ballroom floor of the Sterling Foundation Gala, surrounded by New York's elite, cameras broadcasting to millions, Victoria Sterling gave birth. The baby's cry cut through the chaos, strong, healthy, alive. A daughter. Congratulations, the paramedic said, placing the baby on Victoria's chest. She's perfect. Victoria looked down at her daughter, then up at the cameras. Her name is Phoenix Sterling, and she'll never know her father. The crowd erupted in applause. Not polite society applause, but real, thunderous approval. Marcus was dragged away in handcuffs. Jade was surrounded by FBI agents, and Victoria held her daughter as the world watched. You did it, Michael said, kneeling beside her. You brought him down. We did it, Victoria corrected, looking at Tommy in the corner, still typing away, ensuring every piece of evidence was uploaded, archived, distributed. As they loaded her onto a stretcher, Victoria heard someone in the crowd say, She's a hero. No, Victoria whispered to her daughter, I'm just a mother who refused to let you grow up in a lie. The hospital room was quiet except for the soft breathing of baby Phoenix in her bassinet. Victoria dozed fitfully, exhausted from labor and the events of the past 24 hours. The news played silently on the television. Marcus's arrest, Jade's immunity deal, the Sterling empire collapsing as investors fled. A knock at the door woke her. Michael entered, followed by someone unexpected. Hello, Victoria, Agent David Morrison said, showing his FBI badge. We need to talk. Victoria tensed, instinctively moving closer to Phoenix. I thought this was over. Almost, Morrison said, but there's something you need to know. We've been investigating Marcus Sterling for 5 years. You were never supposed to be part of this. What do you mean? Morrison sat down, his expression grave. Your husband was laundering money for multiple criminal organizations. We were building a case, getting close to arrests. Then you started digging. You almost destroyed 5 years of undercover work. Undercover? Victoria's mind raced. Who? Me, Michael said quietly. Victoria stared at him, the betrayal hitting like a physical blow. Your FBI? SEC, actually, Michael corrected. Embedded in the finance world for a decade. Marcus wasn't my only target, but he was the biggest. Your sister? Real, but not in Wellness Haven. She's in protective custody in Maine. She was my way in. Her fake breakdown got Marcus's attention, made him lower his guard around me. Victoria felt sick. So everything, helping me, the evidence, was real, Michael said firmly. The plan was to let Marcus hang himself slowly, but when he started destroying you, I couldn't stand by. You weren't supposed to be collateral damage. But I was. Yes, Morrison said, and that's why we're here. The immunity deal with Jade, it's fake. She's being arrested as we speak for conspiracy to commit murder. The evidence you found about her planning to kill Marcus makes her a threat to you, too. What about my charges? Dropped, all of them. The evidence clearly shows you were framed. But Victoria, there's more. Morrison pulled out a tablet showing financial records. Marcus hid money everywhere, including accounts in Phoenix's name. Nearly $200 million. It's technically hers, but as her guardian, you control it. Victoria looked at her sleeping daughter. Blood money. Money that can do good, Michael said. The Sterling Foundation was corrupt, but you could rebuild it. Really help people this time. Why would I trust you now? Victoria asked. You lied to me. Because I'm done lying, Michael said. He pulled out his badge and gun, setting them on the table. I'm resigning. My job is done. Marcus is going away for life. The criminal networks are exposed, and you're safe. And then what? Michael met her eyes. Then maybe I try to earn the trust of the woman I fell in love with while trying to protect her. Before Victoria could respond, the door burst open. Jade Winters stood there, wild-eyed, a gun in her hand. Blood stained her gold dress. She'd fought her way out of custody. You ruined everything, she screamed at Victoria. Michael moved instantly, stepping between them. The gun fired. Michael fell. No, Victoria screamed. Jade aimed at her, but Morrison was already moving. Another shot. Jade crumpled to the floor. Hospital security flooded in. Morrison kicked Jade's gun away and checked her pulse. She's alive. Get medical in here now. Victoria dropped beside Michael. Blood pooled beneath him. Wish you could do it here in home, she whispered, but real love means taking a bullet, he gasped, even if you were undercover when you found it. The medical team swarmed them, pushing Victoria back. They worked on both Michael and Jade. The room chaos. Phoenix wailed and Victoria scooped her up, holding her tight. Hours later, a doctor found Victoria in the waiting room. Mr. Blackwood is stable. The bullet missed major organs. He'll recover. And Jade? In custody ward. She'll live to stand trial. Victoria sagged with relief. Morrison sat beside her. He really did fall for you, you know, Morrison said. Made our jobs hell, actually. Kept trying to pull you out of Marcus's path without blowing his cover. Can I see him? He's asking for you, Mo. Michael looked pale but alert when she entered his room. Phoenix was in her arms, finally calm. Hi, he said weakly. Hi, Victoria replied. So your name isn't even Michael Blackwood? It is, actually. Michael David Blackwood. The SEC just made use of my real identity. He studied her face. I'm sorry for the deception. You saved my life, twice technically. Does that earn me a second chance? Victoria looked at Phoenix, then back at him. Marcus is going to prison. Jade's going to prison. I have a newborn daughter and $200 million of tainted money to figure out what to do with. I don't know who to trust anymore. Trust yourself, Michael said. You brought down a monster while in labor. You're the strongest person I know. I was just protecting my daughter. And that's what makes you amazing. A commotion in the hallway interrupted them. Victoria looked out to see reporters flooding the floor. Mrs. Sterling, they shouted. How does it feel to be vindicated? Will you take back the Sterling name? What's next for you and your daughter? Victoria looked at them all, then made a decision. My name is Victoria Morgan, she said, using her maiden name. My daughter is Phoenix Morgan. The Sterling name dies with Marcus's conviction. As for what's next, I'm going to raise my daughter and rebuild my life. The money Marcus stole will go back to the victims and charities he robbed. And then I'm going to disappear for a while. What about Michael Blackwood? A reporter called. Victoria glanced back at Michael, who was watching her with hope and uncertainty. "That's a story for another day," she said. 6 months later, the Manhattan Federal Courthouse was packed for the most anticipated trial of the decade. Victoria sat in the witness box, Phoenix in a carrier beside the judge's bench. Special permission granted, given the circumstances. Marcus, in an orange jumpsuit, looked gaunt. His empire was gone, his assets frozen, his reputation destroyed. "State your name for the record," the prosecutor said. "Victoria Morgan, formerly Victoria Sterling. Can you identify the defendant?" Victoria looked directly at Marcus. "My ex-husband, Marcus Sterling." For 3 hours, she testified. Every manipulation, every gaslit moment, every piece of evidence. The jury listened, riveted. When the prosecutor played the recording of Marcus discussing Jennifer's murder, several jurors wept. The defense attorney tried to shake her during cross-examination. "Isn't it true you were having an affair with Michael Blackwood?" "No. I was faithful throughout my marriage." "You expect us to believe that a pregnant woman took down a billionaire alone?" "I wasn't alone. I had the truth." The attorney pulled up the deepfake videos. "These images suggest otherwise about your character." "Those are fabricated, as a digital forensics expert already testified." "How convenient that Mr. Blackwood, an undercover agent, happened to help you." Victoria's eyes blazed. "What's convenient is that my ex-husband thought he could destroy me while I was carrying his child. He underestimated a mother's love. That's not convenience, that's karma." The courtroom erupted in applause before the judge called for order. Marcus took the stand in his own defense, still arrogant despite everything. "Victoria was unstable," he insisted. "Pregnancy made her paranoid. I was trying to protect her." The prosecutor smiled. "By having an affair?" "Jade Winters was a business associate who you introduced as your intimate partner at multiple events." "A misunderstanding." The prosecutor played recording after recording. Marcus's voice confessing to crimes, laughing about his victims, planning Victoria's destruction. With each piece of evidence, his composure cracked more. Finally, he exploded. "She deserved it. She was weak, pathetic. I gave her everything, and she couldn't even keep my interest. Jade understood ambition. Victoria only understood submission." His lawyer dropped his head into his hands. The jury stared in shock. Victoria felt nothing but pity. "No further questions," the prosecutor said. The jury deliberated for 2 hours. Guilty on all counts. Life in prison without parole. As they led Marcus away, he passed Victoria. "I'll get out. I'll come for her." He looked at Phoenix. "No," Victoria said calmly. "You won't. Because you'll be too busy surviving in prison when the other inmates find out you stole from children's cancer funds." His face went white. He'd forgotten that detail. The guards dragged him away, his threats turning to pleas that no one heard. Outside the courthouse, Victoria stood before a sea of reporters. Phoenix, now 6 months old, babbled happily in her arms. "Justice was served today," Victoria said. "But this isn't just about me. It's about every woman who's been gaslit, every person who's been told they're crazy for seeing the truth. Trust yourselves, document everything, and never, ever give up." "What's next for you?" someone called. "I'm starting the Phoenix Foundation, a nonprofit to help victims of domestic abuse and financial fraud. The money Marcus hid has been recovered. All 300 million. Every penny will go to helping others." "And Michael Blackwood?" Victoria smiled slightly. Michael had spent 6 months recovering, resigning from the SEC, and proving he was more than his undercover persona. They'd been dating for 2 months. Really dating, no lies, no agenda. "He's Phoenix's godfather and a good friend." "Just a friend," the reporter pressed. "That's all for today," Victoria said. As she walked to her car, she saw him, Michael, standing by a simple Honda. He'd given up the flashy cars along with the undercover life. He was holding coffee and a teddy bear for Phoenix. "How'd it go?" he asked. "Life without parole." "Good." They stood there, the sunset painting Manhattan gold. Phoenix reached for Michael, and he took her, making her giggle. "I love you," he said suddenly. "Both of you. I know it's complicated and messy, and you have every reason not to trust me, but..." Victoria kissed him, silencing his rambling. I know, I love you too. Even though I lied? You lied to catch a killer. You told the truth to save us. I can live with that. A reporter snapped a photo, the vindicated woman, her baby, and the man who'd helped save them. It would run on tomorrow's front page with the headline, From Ashes, Love Rises. But Victoria didn't care about headlines anymore. She had her daughter, her freedom, and a future that was finally her own. As they drove away, Phoenix sleeping peacefully, Victoria thought about the woman she'd been a year ago. Trusting, naive, willing to disappear for a man's comfort. That woman was gone. In her place stood someone harder but not bitter, wounded but not broken, betrayed but not defeated. A phoenix of her own, risen from the ashes. 5 years had passed since the night Phoenix was born on a ballroom floor. Victoria stood in the same Ritz-Carlton ballroom, now transformed for a different purpose. The Phoenix Foundation's 5th annual gala was in full swing, raising money for domestic abuse survivors. The irony wasn't lost on her. Mommy, can I give my speech now? Phoenix asked, tugging on Victoria's emerald green dress. She'd reclaimed the color that had once been her armor. In a few minutes, sweetheart. Phoenix, 5 years old with her mother's eyes and thankfully none of her father's features, ran off to play with the other children in the supervised playroom. Victoria had insisted the gala be family-friendly. Survivors shouldn't have to choose between advocacy and parenthood. You clean up nice, a familiar voice said. Victoria turned to find Sarah Martinez, her once friend, once betrayer. Now something more complicated. Sarah, you came. I RSVP'd. Besides, my expose on Marcus won me a Pulitzer. I owed you a thank you. You owed me a lot more than that. I know. Sarah's eyes were sincere. I'm sober now, 2 years. Turns out I was numbing a lot with those pills Marcus's doctor friend was supplying me. Dr. Hendricks? Currently serving 3 to 5 for illegal prescriptions. Another domino in Marcus's empire. They stood in awkward silence before Sarah spoke again. I'm sorry, Vic. Really sorry. Not expecting forgiveness, just needed you to know. I know, Victoria said. I forgave you 3 years ago. Holding on to anger was poisoning me. But forgiveness doesn't mean friendship. Sarah nodded. Fair. For what it's worth, you've done amazing things here. The Phoenix Foundation had helped over 3,000 women escape abusive relationships, providing legal aid, safe houses, and financial support. Victoria had turned her pain into purpose. Mrs. Morgan, her assistant, appeared. It's time. Victoria took the stage, the room falling silent. In the audience, she spotted Michael at their table, giving her an encouraging smile. They'd married 2 years ago in a tiny ceremony with just Phoenix and his real sister, Alexandra, who'd recovered and now ran a support group for gaslit women. 5 years ago, I stood in this room broken, Victoria began. My ex-husband had convinced everyone, including me at times, that I was insane. He stole my money, my reputation, my sense of self. But he made one mistake. He underestimated the power of truth. Applause rippled through the crowd. Tonight, we've raised $8 million. Every penny goes to women and men who are where I was. Trapped, gaslit, desperate. Your donations don't just provide shelter, they provide hope. She was about to continue when commotion erupted at the entrance. Security rushed toward a disturbance. Victoria's blood ran cold as she saw who was causing it. Marcus Sterling. He looked terrible, thin, scarred, his once perfect hair now gray. He'd been released 3 days ago on a technicality, his lawyer finding a procedural error in the original arrest. Victoria had been notified, but was told he had no legal right to contact her or Phoenix. You thought you won, he shouted, his voice cracking. But I'm out, I'm free, and I want to see my daughter. Security grabbed him, but he kept screaming, Phoenix, Daddy's here, Phoenix. That's when Victoria's daughter did something unexpected. The 5-year-old walked out of the playroom, past security, and right up to the man she'd only seen in news articles. You're not my daddy, Phoenix said clearly, her little voice carrying through the silent ballroom. My daddy is the man who reads me stories and teaches me to ride bikes and never lies to me. That's Michael. You're just the man who hurt my mommy. Marcus stared at the child, seeing Victoria's strength in miniature form. I'm your biological father. Biology doesn't make family, Phoenix interrupted, sounding far older than 5. Love does, and you don't know how to love anyone but yourself. The room was frozen, watching this small child face down the monster from their past. Victoria started toward them, but Michael caught her arm. Let her finish. She's safe. My mommy says you're sick, Phoenix continued, that your heart is broken in a way that makes you hurt people. She says I should feel sorry for you, so I do. It must be very sad to be so alone. Marcus's face crumpled. For the first time, Victoria saw him truly broken. Not by prison or poverty, but by the innocent truth of a child he'd never wanted until he'd lost her. Phoenix, come here, sweetheart, Victoria called. Her daughter walked back, taking Victoria's hand. Mother and child faced him together. You're out on a technicality, Victoria said calmly, but the restraining order stands. Come near us again, and you'll go back. The civil suits are still pending. Every victim you created is coming for what's left of you. You're free, Marcus, but you'll never be free of what you've done. Security escorted him out, but he wasn't fighting anymore. He looked deflated, finally understanding that he'd lost more than money or power. He'd lost the chance to ever know the remarkable little girl who just dismissed him with more grace than he'd ever possessed. The ballroom remained silent until Phoenix tugged on Victoria's dress again. Can I give my speech now, Mommy? Victoria lifted her daughter onto the stage. Phoenix took the microphone with confidence that made the audience smile through their tears. Hi, I'm Phoenix Morgan, and I'm 5 years old. My mommy says we help people here, people who are scared, and said, I want to help too. So I made this. She held up a crayon drawing of a phoenix bird. It's a phoenix like my name. Mommy says it's a bird that burns up but comes back stronger, like her, like all of you. So don't be scared. You can burn up and come back too. Thank you. The standing ovation lasted 5 minutes. Later, as the gala wound down, Victoria found herself on the balcony with Michael and Phoenix. The city sparkled below them. Mommy, was that man really my father? Phoenix asked. Biologically, yes, Victoria said carefully. But being a father is about more than biology. Like how Michael is my real daddy? Michael's eyes misted. They'd never push the title, letting Phoenix decide. Yes, sweetheart, he said, if you want me to be. I already told everyone at school you are, Phoenix said matter-of-factly. Can we get ice cream now? As they left the hotel, Victoria caught a glimpse of Marcus across the street, watching them from the shadows. He looked broken, defeated, alone. For a moment, their eyes met. She saw him mouth 2 words. I'm sorry. Victoria didn't respond. She simply took her family's hands and walked toward their future, leaving Marcus Sterling to face his past alone. The phoenix had risen. The ashes had blown away. And somewhere in the Manhattan night, a broken billionaire finally understood that some things, once destroyed, could never be rebuilt. Some betrayals could never be forgiven. And some women, once awakened to their own power, could never again be controlled. Victoria Morgan had been Victoria Sterling once. She'd been a victim, a target, a woman betrayed. Now she was simply herself. Mother, survivor, warrior, phoenix. And that was more than enough. As they drove home, Phoenix sleeping in her car seat, Michael reached over and took Victoria's hand. You know he'll try again, he said quietly. Men like Marcus don't give up. Then he'll fail again, Victoria replied, because I'm not the woman he married anymore. I'm not even the woman who fought him. I'm someone new, someone he could never predict or control. Who are you now? Victoria smiled, squeezing his hand. Free. The car disappeared into the river of Manhattan lights, carrying a family built not on blood or betrayal, but on truth, trust, and the kind of love that rises from ashes. Behind them, the city continued its endless dance of ambition and destruction, creation and collapse. But Victoria Morgan no longer danced to its rhythm. She had found her own. The email arrived on a Tuesday morning, 10 years to the day after Phoenix's birth. Victoria, now 45 and CEO of her rebuilt tech company, almost deleted it. The sender was listed as M. Sterling, 1978. Against her better judgment, she opened it. Victoria, I'm dying. Pancreatic cancer, stage 4. 3 months, maybe less. I'm not writing for forgiveness. I know that's impossible. I'm writing because I need you to know the truth about Phoenix's trust fund. There's more money. A lot more. Hidden in ways even the FBI couldn't find. $200 million in a Swiss account. The access codes are below. It's blood money, but it's her blood. She should have it. I've spent 10 years in hell. Prison was nothing compared to living with what I did. I see Jennifer in my dreams. I see you standing in that ballroom, stronger than I ever was. I was the villain in your story. I accept that. But maybe Phoenix can use my money to be the hero in someone else's. Don't come see me. Don't reply. Just take the money and do what you always did. Make something better from something broken. Marcus. Victoria stared at the screen. 10 years of healing, of growth, of moving forward, and he could still make her hands shake. She forwarded the email to her lawyer in the FBI, then called Michael. He contacted me, she said when he answered. I'll be right there. An hour later, they sat with Phoenix, now 15 and brilliant like her mother, discussing what to do. It's your inheritance, Victoria told her daughter. Your choice. Phoenix, who'd grown into a thoughtful teenager passionate about social justice, didn't hesitate. We take it, and we use it to destroy everything he stood for. We'll fund women's shelters, abuse survivors, criminal justice reform. We'll turn his poison into medicine. Michael smiled proudly. That's my girl. 2 months later, Marcus Sterling died alone in a prison hospital. 3 people attended his funeral, his lawyer, a priest, and surprisingly Victoria. She stood at his grave after the others left, not speaking for a long time. Finally, she placed a single white rose on the casket. You were right about one thing, Marcus. Phoenix is remarkable, but not because of your DNA, because she chose to be nothing like you. She walked away without looking back, drove home to her family, and helped Phoenix draft the announcement for the largest charitable donation in New York history. That night, as Victoria tucked her daughter in, a ritual Phoenix claimed she was too old for but secretly loved, her daughter asked, "Do you ever regret any of it?" "No," Victoria said without hesitation, "because it led me to you, to Michael, to the life we built. Even the pain, especially the pain, it taught me who I really was." Phoenix hugged her mother tightly. "I love you, Mom. I love you too, my little Phoenix." As Victoria turned off the light, Phoenix called out, "Mom, I'm proud to be your daughter." Victoria smiled in the darkness, "And I'm proud to be your mother."